Welcome back. This is part 10 already of Ethan ranting, and there are some topics that I've been asked to cover and I've liked to cover. The topics being consciousness, metaphysics, and what comprises a human soul. So if that's not your thing, beware. Let me preface this by saying I've had all sorts of interesting ideas regarding these topics. The reason I say so is that everyone takes interest in them. But they've always just been ideas. They've always just been theories. I mean, I have had experiences that back them up, but what I'm about to tell you is just my best guess, based more on what I've read than anything else. And there's a gap there. If I had a true understanding of this, then I would be fit to teach like a guru would, or I'd be fit to teach. I just don't think I'm really in the position to be an authority on the subject, is what I'm trying to say. With that said, these are my personal beliefs, and when I say personal beliefs, they're just, as I call them, they're placeholder ideas. They're ideas that seem to make sense. I think they're worth pursuing, but I'm not hung up on them as if I found the true nature of things, because there's a lot more to discover. Is consciousness somewhere other than the brain? Well, if you've ever had a verifiable out-of-body experience, you know consciousness exists outside of the brain, or outside of the nervous system, more accurately. A lot of people, a lot of atheists or agnostics tend to say that what we're experiencing is in the brain, it's in the head, and that's not really accurate, because it's not like there's some. Well, I guess there is a relay between your brain and spinal cord, but my point is that your conception of reality is not just what your brain is interpreting, it's what your nervous system is interpreting. Your nervous system, which is of course your spinal cord and the nerves that go out into your skin, and the nerves that interlace with your vital organs, are all sending messages to the brain, the CPU, but there's also processing going on in the spinal cord. Your spinal cord makes decisions that the brain never hears about, especially in jerk reflexes or whatever. The body doesn't have time to to ask the thinking brain, should I take my hand off this hot pan? Well, let's weigh the consequences out. No, it's an automatic reaction, and yet it's a part of your consciousness. So those of you who think that consciousness resides within the brain, think again. It's a scientific fact that it exists outside of the brain, in that it exists in the rest of the nervous system as well. With that said, the nervous system that's receiving all this stimuli and making calculated decisions about how it's going to react to them, if consciousness is the nervous system interpreting the stimuli, then the stimuli is just as much a part of consciousness as the interpreter. In other words, the sensations you're feeling in your body, the emotions you're feeling in and outside of your body, heat, cold, pressure, sense of balance. We have more than 5 senses. We have a sense of pressure, we have a sense of heat. There's actual different sensory organs, as they're called, or organelles, at the tips of your nervous system, on your fingers, on your skin, that exist for specific functions like pressure and heat detection, texture. So 5 senses is out the window. Okay. On top of that, the impression that your nervous system is receiving from any stimuli is an interface between the nervous system and the stimuli. So as I feel this banana peel, I am this banana peel. It's simple. I'm experiencing this banana peel, and it's not a matter of not banana is experiencing banana. No, banana is. I am what I am experiencing. What else could I be? I am a banana peel. That's what Buddha was going on about. That shit's easy, okay? So, back to out-of-body experiences. I almost had an out-of-body experience, personally. One of my teachers at massage therapy school, he was actually a teacher of Qigong, and when he was a kid, he hit his head really bad at a playground, and his sister was around, and he was outside of his body for a while, looking down at his body, and then he kind of got slammed back into his body after, I think, as he described it, I think it was about 10 minutes out of body. So if you're willing to believe, what is that, third-hand testimony, then yeah, that's proof enough for you. Personally, I was living with a friend of mine who I believe is an ascended master. Or maybe she was just born that way. And her son died before his time after overcoming heroin addiction. He died when his doctors prescribed him both Xanax and methadone, which was enough for him to lay down to go to sleep and have his lungs fill with fluid, and he drowned in his sleep. And she said that she believed he was with her always, and that she had seen him fully manifested one time, and he was etheric blue clouds, which is in line with the testimony of Barbara Ann Brennan, who wrote a book called Hands of Light, which she was a physicist before she was a nuclear physicist before she was an energy healer. So she had a rational scientist's thinking mind, and she, using the powers of observation, studied and documented the human energy field. And I think it's the 6th or 7th level of the energy field, one corresponding with each chakra. I remember these, as she describes, these aren't layers of an onion, they intermingle, but for the sake of study they can be divided into seven levels, and the highest level is I think level 6 is, let's see, I mentioned in TRT chat that anything above level 4, and I'm almost completely lost, but one of the higher levels is blue, bright blue. She said that she saw him in bright blue clouds. She heard him walk into her bedroom, and then she looked, and there he was, and she said, "Mother, beware of lies. Beware of lies." And then he disappeared. So after this story, I was interested to meet John. I was laying on the couch in her living room late one night, and I verbalized, I said out loud, "John, if you're there, I'd like to meet you." And I was sober at the time. I was laying on the couch, relaxing, deeply, calmly breathing, and it felt like the couch was shaking, just really shaking hard, like an earthquake. I've never experienced an earthquake, but it was that powerful. And then it felt like the couch dropped out beneath me, and I was laying there, and I felt like I was being flung out of my body, and I was so terrified by the experience, I sat up, and when I sat up, I was back in my body. That's assuming I ever left. I did not experience non-local reality. I didn't astrally project, and I couldn't confirm that by doing some experiment, like having a friend write down something on his nightstand, and you couldn't have possibly known what that said unless you actually astrally projected, or whatever method you want to use to check it. I didn't even get that far, because the vibrations, as they describe it at the beginnings of astral projection, I think that's what I was experiencing, and it was so terrifying that it sat up. So I almost spoke with a ghost, but then I chickened out. another night, my friend and I were talking, and she was very sensitive to light, so she had all of her windows covered with cloths so that some light would get in, but not a whole lot. And where she lived, or I should say, you know, where her windows were located, there's no way that the headlights of a car driving past would change the shadow in the room. I'm very familiar with this room. I had been there, I had been to her house for months, and I had lived there for quite some time when this happened. There was no possible way of light or shadows shifting from some physical cause. And yet I was looking at her and I saw a shadow. It looked like the shadow that a cloud of smoke might cast on someone, cigarette smoke or whatever. And it looked like that, and the smoke sort of rippled across her face. And I figured she was pretty in tune, and I was always afraid to say exactly what I was thinking. So I said to her, "Did you feel that?" And she said, "Feel what?" And I told her what I saw. No, I told her, I said, I think I just saw John. That's her name, son. Her son's name. And she said, in the hallway. And at this point I was shoehorning an explanation. I said it seemed like it came from the hallway. Really, I don't know where that shadow came from, but what I am certain of is that it didn't come from any, you know, light source changing or anything like that. And I could have chalked it up to a hallucination, but she saw him, or at least she saw him partially manifest. She said she only saw him fully manifest once, but she saw him as I saw this thing creep across her face. So I think that was a legitimate metaphysical experience. Another time, I was in New Smyrna, and there was a homeless man that was just a really happy guy. He'd been a surfer all his life, and he had all of his astrological details tattooed on top of each other, so it was like a sigil or something. It was a pick and poke, and at first I thought he was kind of off kilter, when really he would, if you talked any kind of negative shit, he would send it right back down your throat, and then he'd walk away. And I talked to him later. I said, at first I thought you're kind of meh, but I noticed you just you're very sensitive to negative vibes. And he laughed and smiled like I'd picture a monk doing. And we talked later, and I said, you know, my bike got stolen. And he said, well, I'll get you a bike. And I felt guilt and shame, like, oh, I don't want to go through the, you know, trouble with this guy getting a bike. I might not even be here in a couple days. And then I let all of that go. I let all of my ideas go. I just dropped it. I dropped it, and I just looked into his eyes, and he was smiling. And there's an experience that's described in, you know, all sorts of religious practice, but in Zen Buddhism, and I might be messing up the semantics a bit. Basically, you look into the Zen master's face, and then it's not the Zen master's face. It's just, you know, the more mystical it gets, the harder it is to put into words. But his face took up my whole field of vision, and he was expanding, like he was expanding and coming towards me, and like unraveling outward and shining. And there was this feeling of warmth and unity between us. There was no between us. There was us, and when I say us, I mean in the sense that two brain cells are part of one thought. We were the same person for a moment. I became the, you know, the object of observation. I was planning on going into, you know, what I read in books, because I couldn't recall the experiences that I had, but there they are. So maybe in the next video I'll go into the more detailed aspects of the difference between elementals and the lower astral realm and the upper astral realms, and different practices that you can use to, or different practices that you can perform to experience these altered states of consciousness without the use of drugs. So once again, thank you for listening, and I hope we can do this again soon.